If you've got a Bible, you can open it up to the Gospel of John, chapter 10. If you don't have a Bible, I've got some right here. I'd be willing to give you one. You can keep it forever. Or you can open up the YouVersion app or the Bible app. And if you go to the lower right-hand corner under More and click on that, you can go to Events. And under Events, there's Unchurched right there. And so you can follow along in the notes. Recently, people have been taking pictures of the notes on the screen. That's totally fine. You can do that because, let's be honest, they're really well-done graphics because I do them. But you can also find those notes right in the app, and so you can take your own notes and save them, and just know that that's available to you. Anyway, I'm just super glad that you're here. We're in a new series. Our friend Mike Mader started last week, you might remember. He talked about the parable of what the kingdom of heaven is like, and he talked about how it's like a mustard seed, or how it's like yeast, or how it's like a net of fish, or how it's like buried treasure. And I found this week, there's this artist, his name is Edward Riojas. That's how I would say that, right? I don't know why I'm asking you, because you have brown skin. So, no, right? Yeah. He's Hispanic. Right. How do I say it? I didn't mean anything by that. Yeah, we're cool. Anyway, Edward Riojas, and he does like these iconographic. Was that bad, Carlos? Yeah. Anyway, he does these iconographic art, right? Like these old-fashioned art, and he pulled that message about for joy he went and sold all that he had and bought that field. That was the parable last week. And so this is the field that Jesus gave all that he had and bought. And I love this image, you guys. I love this image of how he found this buried treasure. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy the whole field, so I have the whole field. I'm going to give everything I have so I can claim this field. And we are the field that he claims. We are the treasure that he claims. And so I just love that imagery so much. And I hope you like it too. Anyway, it reminds me of my own reclamation. I'm a reclamation project. Do you ever see, you're driving down the road and you see a piece of furniture that's on the side of the road? And sometimes it occurs to me, just yesterday, that was in their house. That was their living room. You know what I mean? That was their living room couch yesterday, and now, it's at the side of the road. And I love this because I see me in this. I feel like this is me. That Christ recognizes value in me that no one else sees. Someone else just wants to put me to the curb, right? You're useless to me. You don't mean anything to me. So they put me on the curb, but Christ sees me. Christ reclaimed me from the trash heap. Christ restored me. Christ redeemed me. I am his, and he is mine. He recognizes me, and I recognize him. So we're going to talk more about that as we explore the parable of the Good Shepherd. I feel like the Good Shepherd is a deep cut. That's sometimes what people call a song on an album. Everyone knows all the songs that were on the radio, right? But they don't know some of the deep cuts, right? A deep cut. Here's some of my favorites. On the U2 album, Unforgettable Fire, there's a song called Bad. It wasn't on the radio. Not a lot of people know it, but I love that song. It's a great song. On Prince's album, the Purple Rain album, there's a song called The Beautiful Ones. And vocally, it might be the most beautiful Prince song, if not on that record, maybe even ever. I love his vocals on that song. And then there's this album from Billy Joel called Turnstiles. Again, a bunch of popular songs, but there was this song called James on it. And it's this little ballad kind of, James, we were always friends from our childhood days. Anyway, I really like that song. It's a deep cut. And then on Michael Jackson's Off the Wall album, which was his first solo album after leaving the Jackson 5, it was a wild hit, The Wall, because this was just before Bad. This was the album just before Bad. Anyway, on that album, there's a song called Working Day and Night. You got me working day and night. Boop, boop, boop. You got me work. I thought you were going to dance with me just then. Could you put your hands in the air? Anyway, it's just a great song. So those are all deep cuts, right? For me, they're deep cuts. And I feel like the Good Shepherd is a deep cut parable, because we know the prodigal son, and we know all the famous ones, the Good Samaritan, the lost sheep, the one about the wheat and the weeds, and we could practically recite them by heart, these ones. But the Good Shepherd, I feel like, is a deep cut. There's lots to this teaching about the Good Shepherd, and actually it starts in the chapter before. We're talking about John chapter 10, but in John chapter 9, the whole chapter is the story about when Jesus healed the blind kid. There was like this young man, I don't know, I would assume like in his 20s, who was a beggar in town, and everyone knew that he was blind because everyone would have to walk by him. And so in John chapter 9, Jesus heals this kid. It's the one where he spits into some dirt and then makes a little mud putty and smears it on his eyes, and then he can see. Well, after that happens, the Pharisees find out that Jesus healed him. And so they call this kid in. Tell us more about what happened. And through this conversation that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the pastors and the priests of that community, they bring him in because they wonder that he was healed at all. And they wonder if he's lying. And they call his mom and dad to come in. They're like, why are you calling me here? He's old enough to tell you, well, you must have sinned in your life and that's why he was blind, or he sinned in his life and that's why. And bro, he was blind yesterday and now he can see. But the Pharisees didn't want to work like that. They wanted to find someone to blame. And they loved to blame Jesus. They loved to blame Jesus because they were threatened by Jesus. He did faith better than them. He was more earnest. He was more genuine. He was more authentic about his faith. And they didn't like that. And he was a threat to them because the more people caught on to the Jesus way, the less people would be at their church, right? And they wouldn't be giving their tithes and offerings, and they wouldn't be making it popular anymore. And so they didn't want Jesus around. And so they were trying to find ways to pin something on Jesus. And they often grabbed him around the throat of the Sabbath. Because a lot of times, for whatever reason, Jesus was in town for the Sabbath, going to temple, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, you need something here? Let me heal you on the Sabbath. And the Pharisees were like, you can't heal on the Sabbath. You can't do anything on the Sabbath. You're not even supposed to be touching a button or moving anything. You're not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath. When I'm not a pastor, I'm a photographer. And the two places that I always get my gear from, there's two of them. There's a B&H Photo in New York City and Adorama Photo, which is in New York City. And they're both run by, I want to say, at least Orthodox Jews, if not Hasidic Jews. I don't know for sure. I don't even know what the difference is, but I know they're both super strict. So if you want a camera and you think you're going to get it in the middle of Rosh Hashanah, right, or you think you're going to get it during some Jewish, you're not, because they're not there. Their computers aren't even taking orders, right? They shut everything down because it's the Sabbath. And that's how these Pharisees were. And so they didn't like the idea that Jesus was healing people on the Sabbath. And so they were always trying to, figure it out. And so they brought this kid in, and they're criticizing him, they're ridiculing him, they throw him out, is what they do. They throw him out on the street. And I feel that. I feel this idea of somehow there's been times in my life where my way of understanding my faith or my way of understanding Jesus or my way of, didn't jive with leadership, and I've been tossed out of church, and I feel that. So Jesus' story of the Good Shepherd in chapter 10 is his response to the Pharisees when they're like, oh my gosh, you can't heal on the Sabbath, you must be a sinner, Jesus must be of the devil, your mom must have jaywalked, and so then she had a blind kid, and there's all this stuff that's wrong. And so Jesus said, listen, I don't think you got this right. Here, let me tell you this. And so in John 10, this is how it starts. He says, I'm telling you the truth. The man who does not enter the sheepfold, meaning the enclosure where the sheep are, by the gate, but instead climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who goes in through the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. We're only 2 verses in, and there's already really fascinating things that are happening here. It's really fascinating nuances. The first one is this idea of a sheepfold. We would call it a sheep. You can go there, yeah. We would call it a sheep pen. So this is like first century sheepfold, right? Where there's this high enclosure. This is probably 4 or 5 feet high, right? All the way around to keep the wolves out, right? And so that's okay. Do you need to get that? Sorry. That's totally okay. So there's a sheepfold, and as you can see, it's confined. It's relatively short walls. It's accessible only through this gate. This is the only way in for a person who's doing it right, who's not trying to cheat, to get in. He goes through the gate. And so at night, then the shepherd would sleep there. The shepherd would camp right in this little thing, right? And so he would protect the sheep, keep the sheep in, and keep anyone that might just walk in and try to take the sheep out. That was his job. Wolves were kept out by the walls, and the only way for a thief or a robber to get in would be to climb over the walls or try to cross over the shepherd. No one could get easy passage through the gate because the shepherd was there. And for us, the good shepherd is there. And I love this. Like, I need this. Like, yes, I need someone to watch my gate, but I need him to be like a superhero. Like, because I feel like there's people climbing over my walls and there's people trying to get past the gate in my life. And so I need the good shepherd in my life. And you need him in your life. You know, every time that we're together and at the end we pray, here's what I say almost every time that we're together. I say this: Lord, be a hedge of protection around them and bring them back safely to me next week. I say this every week, and I mean this every week. So in my head, it looks like that picture before. It looks like this enclosure. God, be this hedge of protection around my family. Protect them and bring them back safely to me. Be the shepherd over them and bring them back safely to me. Protect them physically from outside threats. Protect them emotionally from inside thoughts. Protect them spiritually from ill-conceived theology. Protect them and bring them back. The other thing that jumps out at me about those first two verses is that Jesus warns against both a thief and a robber. And I'm like, well, aren't those the same words? Like, I feel like I'm going to play cops and robbers. You remember playing, Fred? Did you play cops and robbers when you were a kid? We also played cowboys and Indians. As I look back on that now, that was probably not good. Yeah, it really was. It really was. My mom just the other day, I'm probably not supposed to say this. My mom the other day, she was like, you remember when we were kids and we would do eeny, meeny, miny, mo? I'm like, Mom, just stop right now. What are you even going to say right now? It's a tiger, Mom. We catch a tiger by the toe. Anyway, we just had these ways. And so cops and robbers, and that was way off track. Robbers and thieves. I always thought they were the same thing. You're a robber, you're a thief. But, right. A thief, though, is someone that gains access to something or takes something by fooling you or conning you or deceiving you or doing a trick, right? A robber does that same thing except through intimidation and violence. You know, I was talking to my friend Chris Bell this morning, and we were talking about that pastor in Brooklyn or New York City or someplace just last week or the week before. He was in the middle of a church service, and like gunmen came in, and everyone got on the floor, and they robbed the pastor of $1 million of jewelry. And so I think about, well, maybe there were robbers and thieves in the room at the same time. Like, sure, maybe there was a robber that came to rob that church with a gun. But there was also a thief in that room that was taking by ways of coercion or manipulation, right? I'm glad that guy's okay, right? And his wife, certainly, you know? But like, I don't know. I think about, like, if they came in here, like, they're in for a big surprise. Because I feel like this bracelet was $10 on Amazon. I like it a lot, though. It's not from, like, some foreign country. It's actually from Mystic, Connecticut, and I love it. It's, like, actually a sailor's bracelet, and I love that. This ring was on clearance at an outdoor store for $8 because no one liked it because it was orange, but I wear it inside out, so it's blue, and it matches so many of the things that I wear. My earrings, I feel like those were probably $10 a piece. And then apart from my watch, that's it. So there's definitely not $1 million for anyone who wants to come in here and knock this place over. And so I'm not saying I'm better than that guy, but I'm like, that makes me wonder about people that Jesus would call a thief or a robber in places that they have of leadership in our churches. Two different kinds of thieves, and there are two different kinds of shepherds. Jesus talks about shepherds who achieve their positions through their personal and political connections, or through some fancy education, or through ambition or manipulation, or corruption and pride. They get a position because of those things. Shepherds who had motives for themselves above the motives for the sheep. They see being a shepherd as some way to be fancy, some way to be popular, some way to be famous, some way to be something. Like they want to be a pastor, they want to be a shepherd because of what that provides, not for the benefit of the sheep. Jesus said, I'm not like those shepherds. I am the good shepherd, not a thief or a robber, but the true shepherd. The idea is that there is a door, a proper way to gain entry. Not everyone who stands among the sheep comes that way. Some climb up some other way. Let's continue in John 10. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him. The sheep hear his voice as he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he has brought them out, he goes ahead of them. And the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow someone else. Instead, they will run away from such a person because they don't even know his voice. Pause. Pharisees say, I don't get it. Jesus told the religious leaders this parable, but they did not understand what he meant. What are you even talking about right now, is what the Pharisees said. Do you ever do this thing? Because I know that I do. When I want to communicate disappointment or condemnation, if I feel like you're doing something wrong or you've hurt me, and I'm not saying this is good, it's bad, it's weak for me, but I sometimes say it in a roundabout, thinly veiled way. I want to smite you without actually slapping you, right? Like I want to smite you verbally. Like I know that I've talked about times that I feel like I'm really good at that. I'm really clever. I'm really caustic. I can be really caustic. And I don't like that. It comes so naturally to me. It's like pinpoint sharp and like you don't even know you're dying and I'm just cutting you down. And like all of a sudden you're just like, you bleed out and you're like, I don't even know what happened. That's how I work. I mean, that's like what comes naturally to me. And I'm working on it. But like, I feel like Jesus tells this story to say, hey, you're the bad thief, robber people. You know, like Jesus is trying to tell them that, right? And they're like, that's a dumb story. I don't get it. Because I feel like sometimes, even as hard as I can try to come at someone with my snottiness, their guile, their avarice, their covetousness to be right or better than anyone else runs so deep in their nature that they're oblivious to correction. And that's where this religious leaders were. They didn't understand what Jesus was saying to them because they don't see themselves as doing something wrong. They're so far wrong that they've gone all the way back around, and now they think they're doing right. That's how wrong they've gone. It reminds me, like in the Toy Story, when like they're trying to find a commercial. Toy Story 2, I think, where they're trying to find a commercial, and like the dinosaur, right? The pig is present with the remote control, and they're going through the channels. Oh, there it goes. Nope, it's too far. We got to go back all the way around again. It's a really funny scene, and if you've not seen Toy Story 2, it doesn't make sense, but it's funny to me, and that's all that matters. Anyway, sometimes our religious leaders can get so far to the west, so far in the wrong direction, that they almost feel like they come up from the right direction in the back way. And they didn't get it. To him, the scripture verse says, to him the doorkeeper opens. In this spiritual picture that Jesus is talking about, the door for the sheep pen had a doorkeeper, one who watched who came in and who went out. The doorkeeper knows the true shepherds and appropriately grants them access. In the towns of that time, sheep for many flocks were kept often in a common sheepfold. So like if Paul had a flock and John had a flock and Fred had a flock, we might all just share the same sheep pen, the same, what do we call it, sheepfold, right? So like I bring my sheep in, hey Fred, how you doing? You're good. And we drop our sheep off, and then there's a gatekeeper that lets us in to put our sheep in there. So they'll oversee the door. They'll be the gatekeeper, and they'll regulate which shepherds come in and what they bring and which shepherds they take out. The next part, it says, he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. The shepherd, it says, calls the sheep by name, showing that the shepherd has a personal connection with the sheep. The shepherd leads them, providing direction and leadership without driving the sheep. Again, we might see that as the same thing. Oh, you lead the sheep or you drive the sheep? I get that. That's totally fine. You lead or drive, but I don't think it is the same thing. I think that we're supposed to lead sheep. In our discipleship relationship, we're supposed to lead them, not drive them, not push them, not, right, like disregard them. We're supposed to lead them. You know, in our culture, we often have names for our dogs and our cats or our horses or whatever. And in that culture, they had names for their sheep. The shepherds named their sheep. Even like in the Scottish Highlands, they not only call their individual sheep by name, but claim that an individual sheep will recognize its own name and respond to it. I love that. I love that image. Because in this gospel, Jesus calls the following sheep by name. In John, he calls these people by name. Philip, he calls by name. Mary of Magdala, he calls her by name. We saw that in The Chosen, right? Thomas, he calls him by name. Simon Peter, he calls him by name. And on each occasion, it's a turning point in that disciple's life. And when I realized that God knew my name and called me by my name, it changed everything for me. I wasn't just a face in the crowd for Jesus. Like sometimes we think that Jesus just looks at the whole world as the whole world and doesn't see us. He just sees the whole world. But I wasn't just a face in the crowd. I wasn't one of 144,000 people. Or I wasn't just a number among his elect. He loved me. He cared for me. He recognized me. He called me. Christ reclaimed me. Christ restored me. Christ redeemed me. He knew my name. And I love that. I love that he claimed this crappy piece of furniture with that one thing that's kind of folding down, right? And the back doesn't stay up, right? Like, this is me. And he called me that way. He knew who I was. He knew what I was. And he still called me. Good or bad, whatever you feel about The Chosen, I feel like it significantly changed or shaped, rather, my understanding at least of the Pharisees and religious leaders who served around Jesus in that Hebrew community. It shows me things I never thought of before. And so when I watch that show, or when I think of dudes like Shmuel or Yanni or Neriah, these Pharisees, these Sadducees, these priests, these pastors, I don't think about them as shepherding anyone. I don't think about them knowing anybody's name. I don't think about them bearing or caring about anyone's burdens. I think about them saying things like, "Don't you know who I am?" Like, how many religious leaders do we have don't you know who I am? Like, Fred, if we go golfing, bro, you better pay for my golfing because don't you know who I am? Like, we have pastors that feel this way, right? That they're entitled somehow to something because of their position. Don't you know who I am? Like, they're not interested in caring about the sheep. They're interested in what the sheep can do for them. What can I sell this sheep's wool for? What can I sell this sheep's, I don't know, do you eat sheep rump? Is that what you eat? What part of these sheep do you eat? Leg? Leg of lamb. Yeah, a leg of lamb. Like Legolas from The Lord of the Rings. If you remember, we talked about this just the week. Anyway.
Actually, a lamb, you eat the back most of the time.
Oh, like the tenderloin thing?
That's how lamb is sold.
Oh, see? Oh, a rack of lamb.
The cheaper lamb is sold in the leg. This just comes in a big leg.
I see.
I had lamb once, but I had it in the tenderloin. It was pretty good.
The only time that I've ever had lamb, one at Easter, when you can buy like butter shaped in the shape of a lamb. I love that. And then I also really like gyros, which is lamb meat, right? Like where you have like this big, like a leg of lamb that's slow on a spit, and they shave it off with some tzatziki sauce. Tzatziki. Anyway, I want a shepherd who knows who I am. I want a shepherd who knows my name. Don't you? And isn't that Jesus in our lives? Isn't it Jesus who knows our name? You know, during World War I, some soldiers tried to steal a flock of sheep from a hillside near Jerusalem. The sleeping shepherd awoke to find his flock being driven off by these army guys. He couldn't, certainly, as one guy with a stick, fight off the thieves. Like, he couldn't recapture them by force, so he called out to his flock with his distinctive call, right? It was probably something like, "Whoa!" That thing that they do sometimes. Like, I feel like that's a thing, because I've seen it on Indiana Jones. And then the sheep come. But then the sheep listened in this story, and they returned to their rightful owners, and the soldiers couldn't stop the sheep from returning to their shepherd's voice. Like, it's a flock of sheep. And so they returned to their shepherd. And so this is a picture both of the work of Jesus among his sheep and of what those who seek to serve among the sheep on Jesus' behalf and what they should focus on. There's a 19th century theologian, Adam Clarke, and he describes the 6 marks of the true and legitimate minister of God we can find in this parable. Number 1, he has an earnest entrance into the ministry. He's there authentically. He's there on purpose. He's there for the benefit of the flock. Not because it's a job. He's not a hireling. We'll talk about that in a second. He's there because he loves Jesus and he loves the flock. 2, he sees the Holy Spirit open his way as a doorkeeper to God's sheep. It's the Holy Spirit who sits in that thing, and when we all come at night, and he says, okay, yeah, hi Scott, hi Fred, you guys can come and bring your sheep, right? So the Holy Spirit, we trust the Holy Spirit to be that gatekeeper. He sees that the sheep respond to his voice in teaching and in leadership. I want a pastor that teaches and leads by example, right? And by the way that they live. He is well acquainted with his flock. He knows his flock. He knows their name. He knows their markings. He knows their health. He knows how long they've been around and how much longer he can expect them. He knows his sheep. He leads the flock and does not drive them or lord it over them. I love this one. Like we talked about the difference between driving and leading, right? It reminds me of that meme you can sometimes see on the Facebook where it's like a boss or a manager. Is that me? Hey, stop moving. The difference between a boss and a manager. Where a boss is someone that sits in the chariot and like whips people to make them go faster, right? But a manager, a leader, is someone that like leaves the chariot empty and like pulls with the people. And that's what a shepherd should do in a faith environment. Like we should all be pulling this thing together. I love that idea. And then lastly, he goes before the sheep as an example. I love that. So let's continue on. John 10. Here's what verse 7 says. So Jesus said again, I'm telling you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All others who came before me are thieves and robbers. That's you, is what he's saying to the Pharisees. In case you're still not getting it. It's you. Are thieves and robbers. But the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Those who come in by me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only in order to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come in order that you might have life in all its fullness or abundance. In our lives, we need to focus for spiritual leadership on your life and how it is in Jesus. And then we need to find leaders that follow the heart and in the footsteps of Jesus. So when we look at our Pharisee friends, they certainly had that position because of who they knew, what their political connections were, what their schooling was, what their attire was, where they lived, right? What their last name was. They had that position because of that. Not because they were following the heart and the footsteps of God. So the verse says, all whoever came before me are thieves and robbers. We've talked about this. A thief implies deception and trickery. Robber implies violence and destruction. These take away life, but Jesus gives life, and he gives it abundantly. These are the con men and muggers of the spiritual world. Thieves and robbers, mugging us spiritually. And it's easy to get caught up spiritually in things that the world tells us are desirable and successful. Where's the crowd? What's popular? Where do the fancy people go? What do the fancy people do? What's entertaining? And there's nothing wrong with crowds and popularity and entertainment and fancy people. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not inherently bad, but we have to ask ourselves, are we following shepherds who show us Jesus, or are we being driven in sheepfolds that only value shiny, sexy, and trendy Christianity? What we're doing is a very raw, very real thing. And you can put all the polish you want on it, but sometimes all you got is polish, and there's nothing on the inside. And it's your responsibility to distinguish that, to discern that. The friend that we talked about, Adam Clark, also said this. He said, Kleptis and Lestis, the thief and the robber, should be properly distinguished. One takes by cunning and stealth, and the other openly and by violence. It would not be difficult to find bad ministers who answered to both these characters. Like that, blah, right? Right? And I'm not into that. I mean, some. Like, there's like some dudes, like the ones that were like on TV, like you know, like those dudes on TV, man. There was one guy. He was like during COVID. What was that guy's name? Like totally had like 1,600 plastic surgeries done on his face. What was that guy's name? And he was like, I blow on COVID, like that. He did it like on TV and said, "Send me money," and that guy blow. What's going on, bro? What was that guy's name? Stuart Copeland. Nope, that's the drummer for. Kenneth Copeland. Stuart Copeland was the drummer for the Police. So not Stuart Copeland. Right. Anyway. My point is that we should be following Jesus and make sure that we're not following the gloss. The verse says, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. Jesus described the settled, satisfied life enjoyed by his sheep, those over whom he exercises a shepherd's care. He says, go in and out. This phrase, in the style of the Hebrews, points out all the action of a person's life and the liberty he has in acting. Here's what it says. To go out and in is the common Old Testament expression to denote the free activity of daily life. We see it in Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah was coming in and going out among the people, for they had not yet put him to, he had the freedom to come and go as he chooses. All of his life was free. In Psalm 121, the Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time and forevermore. Deuteronomy, blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. So this going in and coming out means it encapsulates all of your life. All of your life will be abundant. Because that's what he says next. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly. Jesus said this to contrast his shepherd-like care with the unfaithful and illegitimate leaders. I want you to have a full life. I don't want you to create something or produce something that I can benefit from. I want you to have a full life. Those other leaders, they come to steal and to kill and to destroy, and Jesus comes to bring life to his people. The Greek word for abundance is perissos, and it means more or greater or excessive or abundant or exceedingly. Anything beyond is abundant. Whatsoever is more is abundant. When I think about our tables, right, we set our tables up to be 8 tops. Our table could be full if there's 8 people there. That's not abundant. Abundant is if there's 20 people at this table. So apply that to your life. God's not just saying, I want you to have a full life. I want you to have all 8 seats of your table filled. I want you to have 20 people at your table. That's an abundant life. It's overflowing. I don't even know what to do with all this life that I have. That's what God's looking for. An abundant life where it's overflowing. You can't even keep it in. That's an abundant life. The abundant life is above all the contented life, happy with what we've got, in which our contentment is based upon the fact that God is equal to every emergency and is able to supply all our needs according to his riches and glory and in Jesus Christ. We've got, I think, a messed up idea of what an abundant life looks like. We've been sold a bill of goods, a Tony Robbins idea of a full or abundant life. Abundant life isn't an especially long life. Abundant life isn't an easy or comfortable life. An abundant life is a life of satisfaction and contentment in Jesus. I was sitting with a friend just before church started, and we actually hadn't even started talking about anything yet. But I knew what was going on with them. And sometimes for me, I can get so caught up in my discontentment, my unhappiness with where things are at, or my unsettledness, that it blows me up. I'm just completely lost to it. But then I think to myself, but I'm not here to live for me. I'm here to live for you. I'm here to live for that. This morning I was setting up the flags, and there was this, I don't know what was happening for sure. There was a couple of homeless people. There was a bunch of homeless people. There was a couple of homeless people across the street, and one old lady had something or needed something, and then one of the sort of a middle-aged dude had what she needed, and he gave it to her, and she was hugging him and loving him, and I'm like, brother, that's everything. That's everything. That someone had a need and someone met the need. That's everything. I don't need to worry about oh, but my ex this, or oh, my wife she, or oh, my kids this, or oh, my brother that, or oh, my mom. It's easy for me to do that. It's easy for me to get caught up in that. But that's not what life, an abundant life is about. That's a me life. That's a selfish, constricted life, worrying about me and how what this happens is affecting me. And that's not the life of Jesus Christ at all. Someone with a lot of life has stamina. They can stand up to it. They can keep going. They can stay the course. Someone with a lot of life has increased energy. Someone with a lot of life has a large sphere of living. One of the kindest things that you could ever say to me is that, oh my gosh, Scott, I love being around you. You're so full of life. You're so full of joy, and you're so full of la, 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 la. That's the kindest, Jesus-iest thing that you could say to me. And I need to live my life that way. Somehow that, when I drive home, I drive a lot. And there's this guy, probably my age, but he retired early from UPS, and he's single, and just does whatever he wants, right? He's got a bunch of cool bikes, and cool campers, and cool kayaks, and the Jeep, and all this stuff. But Every time he's outside, he knows my car and he waves to me, and I wave to him. And today, I stopped, and I was like, I need to give you a man hug, and that freaked him out. It totally did. And so he said, why? I said, because I need to. And so I hugged him, and I held him for a second, and I said, sometimes I get so caught up in my life, and like you waving to me is like this like moment of peace, this moment of joy, this moment of connection that I wouldn't otherwise get, and I need you to know how much I appreciate that about you. Like, I don't even know his name. He's got this really dope bike, though. It's like a state bicycle bike. Oh, my gosh. With like this, like gum wall tires, you know, like kind of like yellow, amber color. Oh, my God. No. A bicycle. Anyway, I don't know that guy's name, but I know that he makes a difference in my life, and I need to make sure that he knew that he makes a difference in my life. I want to be that full of life. Someone with a lot of life has an overflow of enjoyment. Someone with a lot of life has what it takes to win. Abundant life sheep give honor to the shepherd. They are a credit to the shepherd. And I want to live a life that's a credit to my shepherd. I want someone to look at my life and say, what do you have? And I can say, I have Jesus Christ. And they're going to say, I want some of that too. Here's the last segment. 10:11. I am the good shepherd who is willing to die for the sheep. When the hired man, who is not a shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees a wolf coming, he leaves the sheep and runs away. So the wolf snatches the sheep and scatters them. The hired man runs away because he is only a hired man and does not care about the sheep. Hear me. Does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd. As the Father knows me and I know the Father, in the same way I know my sheep and they know me, and I am willing to die for them. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. The bad shepherd, a hireling, will not defend the sheep and thinks that the flock exists for his benefit. They pad his pockets. They make him popular. They make him famous. But the good shepherd lives and dies for the good of the sheep. The faithful pastor will, as an under-shepherd, display the same characteristics as the good shepherd. He will sacrifice for the sheep, know the sheep, and be known by the sheep. He will be a shepherd and not a hireling who does not care about the sheep. He can never hope to display these same characteristics on the same extent as Jesus, but they should reflect his heart and his goal. Here, as we wrap up, 5 ways Jesus, the good shepherd, knows us. 1, he knows their number and he will never lose one. He knows how many sheep he has and he's in charge of them. That's why he leaves 99 to get one, because he's concerned about having the whole 100. He knows the number. He knows their person. He knows the age and character of every one of his own. He knows our trials. All the ingredients of our life cup are known to him. A good shepherd will know what you have going on in your life. Will know your history. Will know your last week. Will know your next week. Will know about your job interviews and your doctor's appointments and everything else that's going on with your kid. Whatever it is, a good shepherd will know those things. He knows our trials. He knows our sins. When he chose us, he knew what we were. He knew I was a piece of crap couch on the side of the road with the middle section that doesn't go all the way up. He knew that about me, and he didn't care. He knows my weakness. He knows the points where I suffer most. He knows us, not a little bit, not even a lot of it. He knows us perfectly and completely. Look what the verse says again. I am the shepherd who cares for the sheep. I know my sheep, just as the Father knows me, and my sheep know me, just as I know the Father. I give my life for the sheep. Do you see it there? Don't not see it. I know my sheep like the Father knows me. My sheep know me like I know the Father. Don't not see it. Because if this is true, and then this is true, because if he knows the sheep and the sheep know him, can I just go to the next one, the big long one with all the things? This is the verse, the Father and I are one, in all the translations I could find. The Father, it always says the same thing. I and the Father are one. The Father and I are one. I and my Father are one. I and the Father are one. I and the Father, I and the Father, I and the Father. Those are all I and the Father. The Father and I are one. Right? So every way that you could say this verse, it says the same thing. Me and the Father are the same thing. The Father knows me, and I know my sheep. My sheep know me because I know the Father. So if I'm doing the math right, God doesn't just know me a little bit or even a lot of it. He knows me completely. He and I are one. And like, when I think about that good shepherd with the glowing rays of, man, how did the song go that we sang? Oh, how he loves us. Oh, If His grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. I need a shepherd that loves me like that. You need a shepherd that loves you like that. And Jesus loves you like that. I've got a handful of questions for you that I'd like you to discuss at your tables if you can. We'll take 480 minutes to talk about. Oh, yeah, you're right. Let's just take 15 minutes to talk this through at your tables. That'll come up. We'll do announcements, and then we'll get out of here.